Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1066, and today's date is September 4th, 2016, and the title of the episode is The Current Economic Collapse News Brief. Now, before I get started, I just want to make an announcement. I uploaded an interview with Craig Hemke on the X22 Report Spotlight YouTube channel. So if you go over to YouTube and you type in X22 Report Spotlight, it will bring you to the video, and you can listen to the interview. Or you can come over to the x22report.com site, scroll down a little bit, look over to the right-hand side. You can play the interview there. Or you can go to newssentinel.com. Same thing, scroll down a little bit, look over to the right-hand side, and you can play the interview there. Let's get right into the economic collapse news. Now, we've been following the economic indicators for quite a while, and we've been watching this slow, gradual collapse of the system. Remember, this entire system, it is built up on an illusion. The U.S. government, the central bankers, they are trying to keep the people in this illusion. But we've been peering through it, looking at the actual facts and what has really been going on. And we've been looking at housing, for instance. And every time we look at housing, the corporate media, the U.S. government, they're out there trying to tell us that housing is improving, the prices are skyrocketing, inventory is drying up, and they're making it seem like housing is the best thing since sliced bread, and it's incredible right now. But we see housing deteriorating in many locations. It is falling apart right in front of our eyes. If you know where to look, you can see what is happening. And we have been looking in these areas. For instance, in Vancouver, home sales have fallen by 26% from a year earlier. And when we look at this, we can see that the situation in Vancouver and many other places like Australia, in many different cities inside of the United States, housing is deteriorating very, very quickly. Detached properties were hit the hardest, and sales dropped in Vancouver by 45% from a year ago. The average price of the detached Vancouver property has dropped by 17%. And what we're seeing right now is that this housing bubble that the central banks have created, not just here in the United States, around the world, they're popping. I can see it in the northeastern section of the United States, down in the south, in the Midwest, and out west. Now, yes, there are certain cities where the central bank, the U.S. government, they have the ability to control the markets, but they can't control every market. And what we're starting to see is all these outlying markets, they are deteriorating very rapidly. Houses are sitting on the market for 150 days, 180 days. Individuals are continually lowering the prices, and we can see right now the situation is getting worse as time goes on. And as we enter this fall going into the winter months, the situation is going to deteriorate very, very quickly. Now we see Obama, he is out in China, and he arrived in China for the G20 meeting, and we already see there's a draft of a communique that's already been leaked from the G20 meeting. And this meeting is already preset. They already know what they're going to do. They understand that the economy is falling apart. They understand the debt level is too high. So what does this tell us? There's more stimulus coming. Why do you think the Fed was out there and they put out this report telling everyone that just in case there's an economic shock, we are ready to do QE, either at $2 trillion per year or 3 or 4, or, as I would say, much, much more than that. But what's very interesting, as Obama arrived in China, there was no staircase for the plane. The president was forced to use the emergency exit for his final arrival in China. China is actually snubbing the U.S. president. And we can see right now that China, Russia, North Korea, all those countries that do not belong to this private Western central bank system, they're looking at the United States right now and the central bankers and saying, we are not going to follow along in what you're doing. We understand that the United States is in the Pacific, and they're continually provoking China at every turn. But we can see that China and Russia, they're trying to keep the peace. They understand what the central bankers want. They understand the central bankers, their system is dying. And when I say the central bankers, I'm talking about the private Western central bankers, the Rothschilds. Their system is dying right now. The dollar, it's at its end game. And we can see it by looking at all these countries because they're getting rid of their U.S. treasuries. We understand that China is the single largest holder of U.S. treasuries right now, outside the Federal Reserve, of course. And they have accumulated nearly about $1 trillion in U.S. treasuries since 2000. In total, China now holds about $1.24 trillion in U.S. treasuries. China ceased accumulating these treasuries in July of 2011 and has been net selling the U.S. treasuries since. Now, since July 2011, China has collected about $2.2 trillion in U.S. trade surplus dollars and recycled none of them into U.S. treasuries. So where did they put this? What did they do with the surplus dollars? China has been buying gold. They've been buying a lot of gold. They understand what is coming. Get rid of the paper, buy the physical asset. They understand what is about to happen here. Russia understands what's about to happen here. The system is coming down. Other countries who have the means, they are getting prepared for when the dollar collapses and there's a new system reborn. Those countries with the gold will be the winners. They will hold all the cards. Those countries with no gold, they will be the losers. And we can see right now the United States deals in paper, not physical. We see the UK warship HMS Diamond. Well, they'll be sailing this destroyer equipped with missiles and fast-firing cannons into the Mediterranean to join up with the Libya mission. Now, of course, they're using the cover story that this is Operation Sophia, where they're looking to help the situation in the area because they're targeting smugglers. But we can see right now what's happening. They're bringing warships into this area because eventually, just like we knew the United States was going to be going into Libya, the rest of the coalition forces, and most of them already have teams on the ground, they'll be bringing in heavier military assets into the area. We see Russia and Turkey right now. They're moving closer to a free trade deal. Of course, we understand they're talking about the Turkish Stream, and they're talking about many other deals. We understand that Turkey, they have invaded Syria. We understand this is a NATO-U.S. mission. We realize the U.S. tried to pull off this coup in Turkey. It didn't work out. So Obama, during the G20 meeting, he's out there saying that the United States is committed to bringing those responsible for Turkey's attempted coup to justice, which means nothing's ever going to happen because the United States was behind it. And he went on to say, listen, if Turkey can present proof that Gulen was responsible for this, we will extradite him right away. Now, we know the CIA was involved. We understand the United States was involved in all of this. And we realize right now that Obama, as he's saying this, is lying. We know that they're never going to bring themselves to justice. It makes no sense. Turkey right now has opened up a new military battlefront. Turkish tanks and armored vehicles. They've entered Syria in the northern province of Aleppo, opening up yet another battlefront within the last 2 weeks. They're using Leopard tanks and M60T tanks, which are involved in the offensive. And we can see right now they are pushing in this area. The U.S., who provided the HIMAR rocket launchers to Turkey, they are using them to strike into Syria now. Now, we know that the United States didn't provide these missile launchers just to have them sit there on the border. We knew eventually they were going to be used. And we can see this is the beginning stages of a much deeper offensive that is coming. Remember what happened in the past where Ashton Carter visited all the different coalition forces and asked each country to bring in more and more military assets. Do you really think this plan only involves Turkey? No. We know there's special op teams already on the ground. We already understand the U.S. has no choice at this point. We know Russia is trying to formulate and push a peace deal with the United States. Now, the United States, the only way they'll have peace in this area is if Assad is removed. Or, at the same time, Assad is removed and they can separate Syria into different areas. They would take that, leave Assad in Damascus in a little tiny section, and split up the rest of Syria. And we can see right now the talks have come to an end. There is no deal right now because Russia is looking at the situation and they keep coming back to the same thing. Listen, we're not going to be splitting up Syria. The people have to decide that. And we're not removing Assad because that's up to the people. If the people decide not to keep him in power, which I mean Assad, they will vote and they will decide who their leader is going to be. An outside force is not going to make the decision for the people of that country. Because remember, the United States, they don't care, and I'm talking about the United States government, they don't care about democracy, freedom. Look what they did to the Libyan people. They forced a government on them which they did not choose. The same thing happened in Ukraine. Actually, the same thing happened throughout the Middle East. Now, we're getting some information that Mossad, they are training special spies to assassinate certain key leaders in the Middle East, which I mean like Iran maybe Syria, and other areas where there are problems. And we're going to have to watch this situation very, very carefully because I said the only way to get Assad out of power at this point is to have an assassination or to have an all-out war, which it really doesn't matter at that point. So at this time, we can see that the powers at be, which is Israel, which is the United States, UK, Spain, France, Turkey, the only way to get Assad out of power is to remove him. And to remove him means to kill him. And if they can pull this off, they're one step closer into capturing Syria. So I believe this might be their next move. Because we can see the United States will not have any type of peace with Russia. I know Russia continually tries. They're trying to calm the situation down. But you have to remember, the United States government central bankers, they have a goal. Their goal is to capture Syria, to get rid of Assad, to build the pipeline, to place the private Western Central Bank inside Syria, to place the dollar on their natural resources, which is oil, then move into Iran. This has been the plan since the beginning. They haven't deviated from this plan. Yes, it's been taking a very long time. We need to understand right now that all indicators are pointing to this type of scenario. Now, it might change around a little bit. It might end up a little different because every plan is not foolproof. But we need to watch what is happening right now because we can see we're heading into this fall. The economies around the world, they are deteriorating rapidly. Retail, awful. GDP, manipulated, and even the manipulated number, awful. We're looking at housing. It is falling apart very, very quickly. And when housing falls apart, people start to wake up and they start to realize that something's wrong with the economy. The second thing, if the stock market doesn't continually rise and that falls, between housing and the stock market, people really wake up and they understand that something is wrong. So even if we have housing falling apart, many of the people are going to say, okay, something is wrong here. Just like back in 2008, the market was still up high, but housing was deteriorating very, very quickly, and things started to rapidly fall apart. We're starting to see the same exact thing right now. And people are going to be waking up, because I've been speaking to a lot of people and they're realizing there is something wrong with the real estate market. Everything that's coming out of the U.S. government, the central bankers, people are saying, I don't believe them because it's not happening in my area anymore. Things have rapidly changed. Something is not right. So what we're seeing right now is the U.S. government central bankers, the clock is ticking down. We can see there is no peace deal in Syria, which means they're moving closer and closer to this main event, because they've been giving us all these indicators about the banks, how they're going to use bail-ins, how the Fed is preparing for an economic shock, how the president decided to have this executive order with the succession of the Secretary of Treasury. And we can see many things are occurring all at once. And this is what we need to watch, because we're heading into this fall time period. And we can see that things are rapidly falling apart. And when everything goes south, they will give the green light for the main event. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.